Welcome back to our channel on this beautiful day. We're thrilled to bring you the latest and most exciting updates from Genoa, where the shadows of the past are rapidly encroaching on the present. Sit back and relax as we delve deeper into the dramatic events about to change everything for your favorite characters. The storyline could feature Matt's cruel revenge, potentially costing Nick his life. What could happen next week? Genoa City is currently reeling from a catastrophic shockwave that has shattered the fragile peace of its residents, centering around a horrific and seemingly fatal accident involving Nick Newman. The visual of the mangled wreckage, twisted metal, and shattered glass paints a macabre picture of a life violently interrupted, leaving the Newman heir fighting for his very survival in a sterile, unforgiving hospital room. This is not merely a tragic twist of fate, but a calculated manifestation of pure malevolence that has left the entire community suffocating under a heavy blanket of dread. The sheer brutality of the incident has sent ripples of terror through the Newman family, who are now forced to confront the terrifying reality that their vast wealth, immense power, and impenetrable security fortress could not protect their own flesh and blood from a predator lurking in the shadows. The community stands paralyzed, watching as a beloved son, father, and brother hovers on the precipice of death, a victim of an unseen enemy. To understand the absolute tragedy of this moment, one must delve deeply into the agonizing psychological descent Nick has endured in the weeks leading up to this catastrophic event. Isolated in a desolate, dimly lit motel room, Nick had become a ghost of his former self, consumed by a severe psychological break and a crippling addiction that stripped him of his legendary resilience and protective instincts. He had actively alienated himself from the protective embrace of his family, viewing their desperate, loving interventions as oppressive attempts to control his autonomy and dictate his recovery. In this state of profound vulnerability, stripped of his usual defenses and clouded by narcotics, he became the perfect, defenseless prey for a meticulously orchestrated sabotage. He was utterly blind to the lethal danger closing in around him while he sought a false, deadly sanctuary in the toxic, enabling arms of Marie Kirkland, unaware that she was merely a pawn in a much larger, darker game designed to facilitate his ultimate destruction. When the Genoa City Police Department arrived at the grim scene of the accident, the initial assumption of a tragic, drug-fueled crash quickly evaporated, replaced by a chilling and undeniable sense of foul play. Experienced investigators, meticulously combing through the debris and analyzing the physical evidence, immediately noticed glaring inconsistencies that defied the laws of physics and typical vehicular accident patterns. The trajectory of the vehicle, the complete absence of defensive skid marks, and the precise, almost theatrical arrangement of the wreckage suggested a scene that had been carefully curated rather than the chaotic aftermath of a sudden loss of control. The authorities quickly realized they were not looking at a tragic mistake, but a highly sophisticated crime scene designed to mask a brutal, premeditated assassination attempt against one of the city's most prominent figures. As the forensic analysis deepened, the horrifying truth emerged that the entire catastrophe had been staged, with a sickening level of precision and cold-blooded calculation. The perpetrator had gone to extraordinary lengths to create a flawless illusion, planting incriminating evidence, such as drug paraphernalia and empty bottles, to perfectly align with Nick's recent downward spiral and ensure the tragedy would be written off as a self-inflicted demise. The staging of the scene revealed a mastermind who intimately understood Nick's psychological vulnerabilities, his current struggles with fentanyl, and his strained family dynamics, weaponizing his addiction to craft a narrative of a broken man meeting a predictable, tragic end. This was a psychological warfare tactic designed not just to end Nick's life, but to humiliate him posthumously and permanently stain his legacy in the eyes of the public and his loved ones. The chilling sophistication of the staged accident led the police to construct a psychological profile of an attacker, possessing a rare combination of psychopathic detachment, meticulous planning, and a deep-seated, personal vendetta against the Newman family. This was clearly not the work of a random assailant, a crime of passion, or a robbery gone wrong, but the flawless execution of a long-simmering revenge plot by someone who thrives on manipulation and the profound suffering of others. The authorities recognized that the mastermind behind this atrocity possessed a chameleon-like ability to blend into the shadows, manipulate environments, and orchestrate massive destruction without leaving a definitive trace, pointing directly toward a ghost from Genoa City's darkest and most violent chapters. The investigation's crosshairs have inevitably and firmly locked onto Matt Clark, a man whose monstrous history and deep-rooted, venomous hatred for Victor Newman make him the ultimate suspect in this orchestrated nightmare. Matt's recent return to town, cloaked in a fragile, unconvincing facade of redemption and a highly toxic romance with Phyllis Summers, has always been a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate, and the police now believe the explosion has finally occurred. The authorities are piecing together the sinister reality that Matt has been secretly pulling the strings of a massive conspiracy, using Marie Kirkland as a Trojan horse to weaken Nick, isolate him from his protectors, and set the stage before delivering the final, devastating physical blow. The realization that Matt has escalated from psychological manipulation and emotional abuse to attempted murder has elevated him to the status of a lethal apex threat to the entire community. The mechanics of how Matt Clark executed this flawless attack add a layer of sheer terror to the unfolding investigation, as evidence strongly suggests he utilized a masterful disguise to infiltrate Nick's isolated world and orchestrate the crash. By altering his appearance, masking his voice, and adopting a fabricated persona, Matt was able to bypass whatever meager, drug-addled defenses Nick had left, maneuvering the vulnerable Newman heir into a deadly trap before staging the wreckage to look like a tragic accident. The chilling reality that Matt could transform himself, execute a near-fatal hit in broad daylight or under the cover of night, and vanish into the ether without immediate detection highlights his terrifying adaptability and his absolute, unwavering commitment to his sadistic vendetta against the Newmans. For Victor Newman, the revelation that his son was targeted in such a barbaric and calculated manner has triggered an apocalyptic rage that threatens to consume everything and everyone in its path. Standing over Nick's broken, bruised body in the intensive care unit, Victor is forced to confront the agonizing truth that his decades of accumulating immense corporate power and crushing his enemies have not shielded his children from the collateral damage of his ruthless legacy. The patriarch's profound grief is violently intertwined with a burning, unquenchable thirst for absolute retribution, as he realizes that Matt Clark has brazenly mocked the Newman fortress, striking at the very heart of the family with impunity. Victor's internal monologue is a terrifying storm of guilt and fury, promising a scorched earth war that will not end until the architect of this tragedy is entirely eradicated from the face of the earth. Nikki Newman's emotional devastation is a profound tragedy of maternal agony, compounded by the cruel irony of her own recovering vision now forcing her to witness the literal and metaphorical darkness enveloping her family. Just as she was beginning to reclaim her sight and her independence, stepping out of the shadows of her own physical trauma, she is thrust into a nightmare where she must watch her beloved son fight for every agonizing breath, his body broken by an enemy they thought they had neutralized or outsmarted. Nikki's heart shatters as she pieces together the reality that the threat was lurking right in front of them all along, masked by deception, fake redemptions, and their own internal family fractures that left Nick exposed. Her sorrow is a palpable, suffocating force, driving her to demand swift, brutal justice while desperately clinging to the rapidly fading hope of Nick's miraculous survival. The news of Matt Clark's suspected involvement in Nick's horrific accident has completely fractured Sharon Rosales' psyche, violently reopening the deep historical wounds inflicted by her former abuser. Sharon is paralyzed by a sickening wave of revulsion and terror, realizing that the monster who once tormented her, who haunted her darkest nightmares, has now nearly succeeded in murdering the father of her children. The trauma of her past is crashing violently into her present reality, leaving her emotionally isolated and suffocating under the weight of a nightmare that refuses to end, proving that Matt's evil is a pervasive rot that cannot be easily cleansed. Her fierce maternal instinct to protect her family is warring with a paralyzing, deeply ingrained fear of Matt's reach, creating a psychological labyrinth of anxiety and despair that threatens to break her completely. Adam Newman is drowning in a complex, inescapable vortex of emotional turmoil, his recent explosive confrontation with Nick now haunting him as a potential, unintended catalyst for this devastating tragedy. Adam's aggressive, controlling attempt to force Nick into recovery had backfired spectacularly, driving his brother further into isolation, pushing him away from safety, and directly into the waiting, lethal jaws of Matt's conspiracy. Burdened with the sudden, overwhelming responsibility of caring for a rebellious Christian, Adam is consumed by a toxic mixture of profound guilt, fraternal grief, and a lethal, blinding rage directed at the man who orchestrated the attack. He is forced to question whether his own abrasive nature and desperate need for control inadvertently sealed Nick's fate, a moral conflict that is slowly tearing his already fractured identity apart. As the Genoa City Police Department launches a frantic, city-wide manhunt for the disguised Matt Clark, a palpable sense of paranoia and claustrophobia grips the entire town. The authorities are chasing a phantom, a man who has proven his terrifying ability to manipulate reality, stage elaborate crime scenes, and slip through the cracks of justice with terrifying, practiced ease. Every shadow in the alleyway, every stranger on the street, and every unanswered question amplifies the dread that Matt is still out there, coldly observing the chaos he has unleashed while meticulously plotting his next devastating move. The investigation is a desperate, frantic race against time, fraught with the terrifying knowledge that a cornered, highly intelligent psychopath is capable of unleashing even greater horrors upon those who seek to capture him. For Phyllis Summers, the undeniable, mounting evidence pointing toward Matt Clark shatters the delusional sanctuary she had built around their toxic romance, plunging her into a terrifying, cold reality. The woman who had fiercely defended Matt, who had willfully ignored the desperate warnings of her children and peers, is now confronted with the horrifying truth that she has been sleeping with a monster capable of slaughtering her ex-husband and the father of her child. Phyllis's legendary survival instincts are violently awakening, replacing her romantic fantasies and defensive posturing with a primal, chilling realization of her own extreme vulnerability. The psychological whiplash of transitioning from Matt's devoted lover to his potential next victim forces Phyllis to prepare for a brutal, inevitable confrontation where she knows only one of them can survive. The staged accident and the subsequent frantic investigation have cast a long, suffocating shadow over Genoa City, fundamentally altering the moral landscape and the sense of security of its residents. The realization that an enemy could so flawlessly orchestrate a near-fatal hit and manipulate the physical evidence to frame the victim has eroded any remaining sense of safety or trust within the community. The Newman family, once viewed as an impenetrable monolith of power and influence, now stands exposed and bleeding, their internal conflicts and secrets weaponized by a predator who understands exactly how to dismantle them from the outside in. This tragedy is clearly not an isolated incident, but the opening, bloody salvo in a much larger, darker war that threatens to consume everyone connected to the Newman legacy, leaving a trail of shattered lives in its wake. As the night deepens over the hospital where Nick Newman clings to a fragile, fading thread of life, the sterile silence of the intensive care unit is broken only by the rhythmic, mechanical hum of the life support machines keeping him tethered to this world. Outside, the police scour the city for a ghost, unaware that the true horror lies not in the accident itself, but in the meticulous perfection of the deception that continues to unfold. Somewhere in the sprawling darkness of Genoa City, Matt Clark sheds his disguise, a cold, triumphant smile playing across his lips as he reviews the chaos he has so effortlessly orchestrated. He has proven that the mighty Newmans can be broken, but as he reaches into his pocket to pull out a pristine, silver key belonging to Nicky's beloved Ferrari, a horrifying realization dawns. If Nick was merely the distraction, who is the true target of the impending slaughter?